Well, prior to the heads of states uniting at one table for the G20, bilateral talks have been taking place on the sidelines. Russia and the US have agreed to start work straight away on a new offensive arms reduction treaty, which they plan to sign by the end of this year. This came out of the first eye-to-eye meeting between Dmitry Medvedev and Barack Obama on Wednesday.
This meeting took a bit longer than was expected due to very tight schedules of both presidents. It was initially planned that that meeting would last for about 50 minutes, but instead they talked for about an hour and a half, which was read as a very good sign in the Kremlin. After this encounter one-on-one, they went out to reporters to make a joint statement in which they said that they are ready to move beyond the Cold War mentality and take their relations to a new level. Now, one of the first concrete outcomes of this meeting was an idea expressed by both presidents that they should restart talks on the new strategic arms reduction treaty, START 1. This is the largest disarmament treaty in history, and it proved to be very effective, helping to significantly reduce stockpiles of nuclear warheads, both in the United States and in Russia. But, you know, it's interesting that this original START treaty took almost 10 years to negotiate, and in this regard, this new goal, this timeline set by the two presidents seems to be very ambitious. They asked their administrations to draft a follow-up agreement by the end of this year when the START 1 expires, and some experts say that it may not be a realistic goal, but we should wait and see.
Today we've discussed almost all the issues important to us, including the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons, reducing strategic arms, cooperation on counter-terrorism and restoring global financial stability. This is just the beginning of our talks, but we understand we have much more in common than that which separates us. I agree with President Obama that our teams did a good job on a number of declarations and on shaping the general frameworks of our relations. I'll be very glad to see Mr. Obama in Moscow this July. July is the warmest month in Russia, and I hope our talks will be warm too.
Now, another issue that they also discussed was Afghanistan and cooperation on that front. And finally, the United States offered some sort of a sweetener to the Kremlin, saying that both sides should speed up work to make sure that Russia enters the World Trade Organization as soon as possible. Well, this is a very good sign and nod towards the Kremlin, because Moscow has been trying to negotiate the terms of agreement, the terms of entry into the World Trade Organization since the early 1990s. So it is definitely seen in the Kremlin as a bow.
My hope is that, given the constructive conversations that we've had today, the joint statements that we will be issuing, both on reduction of nuclear arsenals, as well as a range of other areas of interest, that what we're seeing today is the beginning of new progress in U.S.-Russian relations.
In the final years of the Bush administration, we heard similar statements. The two sides always recognize that they have disagreements and that they have common interests. But what is different this time around is that in the new Obama administration, there are quite a number of people who know Russia pretty well, who understand how Russia differs from the Soviet Union, and who indeed have moved beyond this Cold War mentality. For example, former U.S. ambassador to Russia, Alexander Rezhbo, has been appointed to a post of Deputy Defense Secretary, while his successor, William Burns, is now Deputy Secretary of State. So there are hopes in the Kremlin that these people will also bring a new type of thinking to the White House.
And President Medvedev has started his meeting with the host of the G20 summit, UK Prime Minister Gordon Brown. It's the third such meeting between the leaders, where they're set to touch on a number of vital issues. The global credit crunch, trade and investment between the two countries are expected to top the agenda.
and congratulate you.
And to discuss the first meeting between Brown and Medvedev, RT's political commentator Peter Lavelle joins me here in the studio. Thanks for joining us. I would say that economic issues and economic crisis has really got to be right up there in their conversations, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting as we can take virtue from necessity here. You know, over the last couple of years, relations between Russia and the UK have been quite poor. I think we need to also ask the question, is the button, reset button, been hit in this relationship? And I think there's a definite yes here. And it's really sad because some political issues like the Litvinenko affair and things like that really hurt political diplomatic relations, but from people to people it's been getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and business-wise too. The UK is a very big investor in Russia, so these type of forums can actually help, you know, get around something. Sometimes we're just never going to agree on something, but why should that destroy a relationship?
Now, President Medvedev has been making signals about the IMF and the World Bank. Maybe those sort of institutions could be restructured. Well, how would that sit with Gordon Brown?
Well, you know, the British love to talk about this special relationship with the United States. And in some ways it's true, some ways it's an illusion. But in this sense, you know, the IMF, World Bank, that's a very special relationship because you have, these two countries have a real strong stake in the world system because they have a lot of power in these institutions. And Medvedev is going to turn around and say, look, this is the 21st century. Russia, China, India, Brazil, these are up-and-coming major economic powerhouses. They need more of a say here. So, you know, I think that the Chinese will work on the Americans, maybe the Russians can work on the British, you know, and all this kind of stuff here. No, but seriously, you know, Russia is a very good spokesperson in talking to Britain saying, look, it's time for a rearrangement of the global order, and that it's time to start listening to countries like China and Russia, and you know what, they really have to. I mean, especially the Chinese here. So these forums, you know, I'm going to talk up G20. I'm talking it up, you know. A lot of people say talking shop. I like this idea. I like it because it's such a diversity of views of different countries talking together, and countries that have a lot of different kinds of experiences, not a very Anglo-Saxon world view that goes all the way back to the 19th century. This is the 21st century now.
Different countries talking together, but Medvedev and Brown don't seem to be on first-name terms as yet. Does that matter?
Well, I noticed that Medvedev and Obama are not on first-term basis either, okay? That certainly takes time. But again, like I said earlier, let's not let this kind of thing get in the way of action. Action, action, action. That's what we need now. I'm tired of the talk. Let's get to the action. And they have the tools, they have the power, they say they have the political will. Let the games begin.
In terms of action, again, President Medvedev has talked about the possibility of creating a new global reserve currency instead of the dollar. What would you make of that?
Well, I think it's time to start seriously thinking about it, and they are doing it. It's going to take a lot of time. The ruble has a long way to go before it could become a reserve currency. But the Chinese have been talking about it. And, you know, when the Chinese talk about something and the Russians are saying the same thing, that's clout. That's a lot of power. I think within a decade, maybe optimistically, we could have a new basket of currencies instead of relying so much on the dollar, because the dollar was grossly mismanaged by the United States, grossly mismanaged, and people are simply stuck with it right now without really much of an alternative.
So is there anything to be optimistic about from the G20 in general?
I think once everyone starts getting on the same page of understanding what problem we have, then they can start thinking about how to get out of this. It's no panacea here at all, and it shouldn't be that way, thought of as that way. We're not going to get any. We'll get a communique, but no grand strategy. They're going to have to keep talking and talking and telling each other what they're doing, because if they don't, and I'm predicting it, we're going to go back to protectionism, and if we do that, it will prolong this thing for a much, much longer time. Everyone's doing it too. No one likes to admit it, but almost everybody at the table is being protected. This is what we have to be so afraid of.
Okay, Peter Lavelle, thank you very much.
My pleasure.